what Germany as a whole needs is indeed immigration into the labor markets. An overall drawback against immigration is exactly something Germany doesn't need. We need the right type of immigration.
What would success for the German far right mean for business in the country? That's a question posed by this weekend's elections in 2 German states, and a third one 3 weeks later. In each, polls show strong numbers for the far-right Populist Party, the AfD, or Alternative for Germany. My guest, Clemens Fuest, is head of the country's most prominent economic think tank, the IFO Institute. I began by asking him what was at stake for business and investment should the far right do well.
Well, it certainly doesn't help. The AfD's agenda doesn't focus on economic policy questions, but in economic policy, the agenda is protectionist. The AfD discusses Germany leaving the EU. I think that's unrealistic as a scenario, and it's not a matter for state governments. It would be a matter for the federal government. But overall, there is a protectionist tendency, and there is, of course, a xenophobic tendency, which means that foreigners who are badly needed in the German economy, including the economy in Eastern Germany, will be more reluctant to go there and to work in Eastern Germany if the AfD joins the government. So in that regard, the impact on the economy would be negative.
When we're looking at businesses, especially in those states, which are all in Germany's former East, the eastern part of the country, when we look at businesses there who are operating there, what are we hearing from them? Is this mostly about the reputation that would be damaged if the far right surges? Or is it the fundamentals of finding talent? As you mentioned, German businesses need labor and they're not finding it domestically.
I suppose it's both. It's a reputational problem. So we have a strong right-wing party, right-wing populist party with the AfD, and a left-wing populist party with the BSW. And let's not forget that. And it is likely that these 2 populist parties will have a majority. So that's a matter for concern. It's a reputational question, but it will also make it more difficult to attract people from outside, to attract talent. And that's something businesses don't like. And that's why they would certainly favor moderate parties. But the polls are telling us that there will be a majority of populist parties in these states.
We know that bigger businesses have been more outspoken. What about the family-owned mid-sized businesses that are so important to this country?
I mean, businesses, I guess, as a whole, tend to be reluctant to comment too much on economic policy questions. They don't want to create divisions among their employees, which often have different political views. But I think businesses overall share the concern that what we do not need for a sound economic development is populist economic policies, either from the left or from the right. What we need is stability and constructive economic policy that helps Germany overcome its economic stagnation, and that's very difficult to achieve in the current political environment.
We know that many voters in the areas that are going to vote right now say that immigration is a primary concern of theirs. We know the immigration numbers have been higher in recent years, and then also, of course, the legacy of 2015 and the surge of migration still plays an effect there as well. Businesses want skilled talent in many cases. Where do these 2 areas intersect? Because people don't like what's coming in from other areas, from economic immigration, unskilled labor perhaps. Does that mean that it's going to be harder for businesses then as a result of that growing skepticism?
I think what the economy needs, what Germany as a whole needs, is indeed immigration into the labor market. So maybe not only skilled immigrants, but immigrants as a whole who join the labor force, immigrants who respect the law. And the big majority the overwhelming majority of immigrants coming to Germany do respect the law. They are willing to work. And insofar, immigration is a necessary component of economic policy, and fostering immigration and supporting immigration is a necessary component. At the same time, that it is inevitable that tensions arise if there is very strong immigration in certain areas. And something entirely different is radicalized people and terrorists. Of course, there is a concern that with large numbers of immigration from certain regions, especially Islamic terrorist organizations will succeed in getting their supporters into Germany. And I think there's a justified concern that needs to stop. But an overall drawback against immigration is exactly something Germany doesn't need. We need the right type of immigration.
You mentioned the two parties that are poised to do well in these elections, the BSW and the AfD, also known as the Alternative for Germany. If we look at the party program for the Alternative for Germany, they say that they do believe in measured migration of skilled workers from outside the country. That sounds good, right? What's wrong with that if they say we do need those kinds of outside workers?
That's absolutely right. So we do need skilled immigration, and I think we also need immigration into the labor force at lower skill levels. Insofar, that's fine. But of course, the AfD says certain things in its program, but they do create, at least parts of this party do create a xenophobic atmosphere, and I think this will prevent even skilled immigrants from coming to Germany or from going to Eastern Germany.
And of course, we should note there that many AfD leaders and supporters have taken up the phrase of remigration, which doesn't really seem to draw a line around certain types of immigrants, second-generation immigrant families here in Germany. For example, I believe that's what Mr. Fuest is referring to there, though he can correct me if not. I do want to move to my next question, though. The AfD has also said that the domestic labor market should be tapped first before turning to outside of Germany's borders. How realistic is that right now, given the labor market trends that we see?
This is not wrong, but I think these are not really alternatives. These are complementary policies. Yes, we need to look at our domestic labor force. We do need to our educational system, and we have to make the most of our domestic labor force. And it would be bad to neglect that. But suggesting that by focusing on immigration, we have to neglect the domestic labor force is simply wrong. I think these are two sides of the same coin.
Do you believe that the fundamental need for outside labor, given the demographics here in Germany, is that a politically distorting factor that then affects businesses and investment in this country?
Demographic change and the impact on the labor market does affect economic growth prospects and does affect investment in Germany. There's no doubt about that. A lot of investors think, well, this is a country that is shrinking, the labor force is shrinking, so let's rather invest in other countries. I think that's something inevitable. And therefore, I think what's key is have a set of policies and a strategy to address that and to make the most of the labor force we have. And yes, we need to think about mobilizing the domestic labor force. These are very large numbers. And in addition to that, Germany has to position itself as a country for immigration into its labor markets. But these two policies are complementary. They are not alternatives.
Have we seen any evidence or suggestion that the rise of far-right parties who are skeptical of immigration, that is affecting skilled labor, for example, or all, even unskilled labor from coming into the country, that may make it harder for businesses to hire from outside, I should say?
I think we should not forget that the extreme left, is also anti-immigration. Generally, I think in Germany we haven't yet seen any measurable impact on immigration so far. But so far, the AfD has not become member of any state government. The fact that we haven't seen studies measuring that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So anecdotally, if you talk to people, yes, some people, especially foreigners or people linked to foreigners, international couples, yes, when they talk about Eastern Germany and the possibility of moving there, the issue of the AfD and right-wing populist parties inevitably comes up.
These are all former East German states which decades ago lost many of their businesses, younger workers to the former West. To what extent can we say is this region still disadvantaged in comparison to the West or markedly different?
The former Eastern German states are still different from the West. For instance, the headquarters of most large companies are in Western Germany, not in Eastern Germany, and that has an impact on the availability of jobs and so on. At the same time, in terms of overall economic developments, there has been a catching up process, and there are regions now in Eastern Germany that are more prosperous than some regions in Western Germany, but there certainly still is a gap in terms of economic development.
All right, that's Clemens Fuest, with the president of the IFO Institute. Clemens, thank you very much.
Thank you.